We appreciate you, and let me introduce you to the folks. Well, it's just a big pleasure on goldseek.com radio today and an honor to welcome back Martin Armstrong, head of Armstrong Economics, author of many must-read books, and the subject of at least two film documentary must-views. Welcome back, Martin Armstrong.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's a great time to have you because, your forte certainly encompasses all these markets, but also the geopolitical. And wow, do we have a lot going on there.
Yeah, well, that's, what I've been trying to say for a long time is that I know a lot of the gold people were listening to, inflation, all that sort of stuff. And I pointed out that gold went from like $100 in 1976 up to about 400 by December 79. It went from 400 to 875 in the last 6 weeks when Russia invaded Afghanistan. It's the geopolitical stuff that creates uncertainty. And that's when you really go for, precious metals or things of that nature, when you don't know really the final outcome. I mean, even the ancient Romans, they had a temple of Janus, who January is named after, the god that had two faces. And during peace, the doors were closed, and during war, the doors were open because the winds could go back and forth, and you never know which way you end up.
Uh-oh. Well, uncertainty never makes investors happy. Very few, right? Except for volatility investors.
Yeah, because often a lot of people just don't understand what's going on. And then you have the mainstream press usually spinning whatever, the agenda is supposed to be. The Institute for the Study of War is the most ridiculous propaganda organization ever. And it's Victoria Nuland's sister-in-law that runs it. And every day is, Russia's losing this. Russia just suffered the biggest attack. Never do they ever tell the truth.
So deception is key here.
Well, particularly in matters of war, they always say that the first casualty is truth. And to a large extent, that's correct. Mainly because they're not going to tell the truth. So you have this Institute for the Study of War, not peace, always saying Russia's weak, Russia's losing, etc. And that's to keep people, okay, fine, we should go in and support them. We can defeat Russia. And if they ever really said the actual truth, people go, well, why are we doing this anyhow? For the life of me, I understand with the neocons. When Khrushchev said, we will bury you, their philosophy was to take communism and spread it to the world. And the neocons, responded and said, oh, really? Well, we're going to spread democracy to the world. Of course, their democracy is really we don't get to vote on a lot of things. But the problem, I think, with these people is that communism fell all by itself. And, I think they missed the fact that they never got to fire a shot, So Russia and China are still enemies, although they're no longer communists. So what is it that, when Reagan wanted to meet with Gorbachev, the excuse was, well, you can never trust a Russian. And he just rejected him. Same thing with Trump. When Iran just shot down a drone, an unmanned drone, John Bolton wanted to invade Iran. He says, no, I'm not going to do that. They always want war for some reason. I don't know. Ron Paul said they've been fighting, neocons have been fighting wars for 30 years and they've never won a single one yet.
Ron Paul's been a great guest and a good friend of the show, for over a decade here. But back on point, Martin, what do you think about gold? I mean, we've been winding up, haven't we, for about 2 years? The dollar's been strong, holding gold back, holding silver back, but it looks like we're getting a big pause in the greenback here. Might we see an opening, a big to break out to new highs, you think, in AU and AG?
Well, yeah, look, the you have three highs in there basically, usually the fourth time you go through. We have a real convergence here in international trends. Our computer's projecting that we are heading into a recession into 2024, mainly because when you start talking about war and now escalating it into Israel, etc., that creates uncertainty. And as you said, investors don't like uncertainty, but consumers start to spend less during uncertainty. They save money at that time. So that brings about a short-term recession. We're not talking about a Great Depression or something, but so that is one factor. The second factor has been Biden, economics, even if you can have the audacity to call it economics. I mean, the Biden administration we've gone through a coup, basically. Biden is their perfect president because he just says whatever he's told and reads the cue cards. That's it. And the two dominant parties there, and they're really running the country, are the neocons and the climate change people. And neither one of them care about the economy, nor do they care about the country. And so the problem you have here is that you have reckless spending coming from the Biden administration. I mean, like he wants to give another $100 billion to Israel. And I mean, it's always just throwing money out the window. Ukraine is a joke, an absolute joke. You have Zelensky suspending elections, claiming he's fighting for democracy, when the Minsk agreement was supposed to allow the Donbass to vote to begin with. And then you have international war. So the international war tends to send capital away from wherever the conflict is. So you'll see the capital flow into the United States, and that supports the dollar. So you have the fiscal irresponsibility of Biden, which undermines the dollar. And then you have the consumer backing off in recession, which usually pushes the dollar up. So you have a lot of uncertainty and confusing trends developing. But when this really starts to materialize into people understanding what's really happening, that's when it won't really much matter. The dollar and gold would go up together because you're looking at a flight of capital. Some people will buy gold. Some people just want to get out of Europe, etc. Not everybody does the same thing. So the two trends will actually come together. And that's what our computer's been projecting, and it's happened many times in history. So we have to understand that. Gold went up, into 1980, but so was interest rates. So, and I mean, I had even met with the U.S. Treasury back then, and when Volcker in 81 had raised the discount rate to 14%. And I met with him, back then I was maybe a little bit more naive. And I said, guys, the national debt's going to double in less than 10 years. And they calmly said to me, yes, Marty, but we'll be paying back with cheaper dollars. I said, okay, I guess you guys know what you're doing, So, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. You have neocons that only want war and they could care less about the cost or the impact globally. And then you have the climate change people who do not understand you cannot shut down fossil fuels without an absolute major depression. So, they all have their own little agendas, and there is no coherent strategy. And then you have Biden who just, smiles and does whatever he's told.
Yeah, we've got a confluence of events. And speaking of, let's jump back into the markets again, Martin, and talk about crude oil. We're seeing a lot of renewed interest in black gold, aren't we? And this gets a little exciting, or at least important to keep our focus on, right? Because we have the potential for a lot of conflicts sending crude oil higher, and then maybe inflation and related supply and demand issues. What do you think?
Well, I think it was just last Sunday that you had Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press, and he's one of the godfathers there of the neocons, and I couldn't believe it, but he actually came as close as you possibly could to declaring war on Iran. And he said, "Oh, Iran's really behind Hamas, and we should go in there and take out their oil production." It makes it sound so simple. you know, um, 20% of the world's oil supply does go through the Hormuz. So if he actually did what he says and attacked the oil production of Iran, that's bringing in Russia. Once we step in, you're taking this from a regional conflict to a global war. Pakistan has already threatened that if Israel sends nukes to Iran, they'll respond on behalf of Iran. They'll force Turkey to take the side of basically the Muslims. This is a real mess, and you can't deal with this. And honestly, it just seems as though they are so stupid. And trust me, I'm making sure I make that word purposely. I mean, even if you in military strategy, there have been people that have pretended to retreat, and during the American, Revolution, one, basically, I think his name was General Daniel Morgan. He set up a way to make the English think that they were fleeing. And he drew them right into their kill box, and that basically turned the Revolutionary War. I mean, when Hamas goes in and does terrorist strikes, all right, they're usually, what, 10 people? The fact that they used 1,000 people this time, it's a trap. It's deliberate. We then retreat. It's to bring in the Israeli army into a kill zone. This is a real mess. And you have these politicians like Lindsey Graham, who apparently have never even picked up a book on military strategy. you know, um, Hamas, what they did was deliberate to create war. It wasn't a terrorist attack. A terrorist attack, like I said, it's like 10 guys and a camel. Um, so you have to be careful here. I mean, this is a deliberate act to create this region into much more than just a regional conflict.
Yeah, it definitely looks, Martin, like we're being set up. The whole world is being set up for World War III. Do you think we're on the cusp of WWIII?
Our computer's basically showing that's probably coming by 2025. And I posted on our site, because a lot of our clients have been noticing it, that our model on GDP has what we call a panic cycle in the United States for 2025. I mean, a panic cycle in GDP. This is not common. All right, it might be the first one I think I've ever seen, but
What do you think it bodes?
it basically we're going into World War III. The Biden administration is simply out of its mind. The neocons, um, they lack strategy on everything. You can hear, you can go on YouTube and McNamara, who was the neocon that got us into Vietnam, before he died, he did a video apologizing and said we were wrong. They thought Russia was involved in all this stuff. He said it was just a civil war. And they've never ever assessed anything correctly. Iraq, you took out Saddam Hussein, and then he was the check and balance against the Shiite, extremists, including Iran. I mean, they have been in war back and forth. Why would you take out Iraq? I mean, it made no sense. And then you created ISIS, and removing Saddam Hussein is basically something that probably has allowed World War III in that entire region.
It just it destabilized, didn't it? A stabilizing force.
The same thing with Gaddafi. I mean, the two of them, okay, fine. Yes, they were dictators. All right. But they were against the religious fanatics. So now you have religious fanatics running everywhere. I don't know. It just didn't seem to make very much common sense to me. And the same thing here. This was obviously orchestrated, the same as 9/11. I can tell you, I know 1,050% that the first terrorists were in their cells and they drew the World Trade Center with planes going into it in advance. All right. Their lawyer, Lynn Stewart, the government even prosecuted, saying that she was passing notes back and forth to him. They knew about 9/11. They set the charges to bring down Building 7. And what did they get out of it? They got the war against Iraq. They got the Patriot Act. We can't even send $3,000 or more to an individual anymore. Who are they? What account, etc. We have to take our shoes off when we get on a plane. I mean, they got so much power out of 9/11, and they knew it. They could have stopped it, but they knew it was coming. And this is the same thing. How you get 1,000 people massing on the other side of that fence and nobody knew? And it took hours for them to get there. And I had inside information that told me that 2 days in advance, they redeployed the guards away from the border.
Unofficially, Martin, I've been told that their entire military was told to stand down for up to 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is they did this for power, but they thought, okay, fine, we'll be able to to increase and go after Gaza. Well, everybody's going to come in. Don't they understand that? And that's what I mean about these neocons. They just don't really think strategy through. Most of the Hamas people are not even Palestinian. And then they hide there among the Palestinian civilization, and they use them as shields. They want Israel to kill as many Palestinian civilians as possible. Then they let's all get up in a holy war against Israel. I mean, I have good information that most of them weren't even Palestinian.
Martin, do you have any ideas on how to de-escalate? Many of my guests have been suggesting this may be our only hope for survival on Mother Earth.
The problem is the people we have in power are not interested. And I don't know how to ever, talk to them to get them to stop. I mean, I don't think it's possible. I think this is our fate, and we're just going to have to deal with it on an individual basis. But I mean, the Israeli people, I think the latest polls I saw was 80% of the people are blaming the government. More than 50% think that Netanyahu should resign. But does any of this matter? Look, the neocons are using Israel the same as they're using Ukraine. They don't care about the people. If they all die, great. See, that shows that, like in Ukraine, that, oh, see how bad Russia is. Come on, we all got to go get them. This is what they want. I mean, I have employees from Kiev and from Donetsk. They're now all, living in Berlin. They've all fled the country. This is good for the country. I mean, what are you fighting for? It's certainly not democracy or anything else. Zelensky, about a third of the property now of the farmland is sold to American funds. Kill all the farmers, and hey, you can grab whatever you want. So Israel is basically being treated the same as Ukraine. The neocons could care less about the Israeli people. This is not about them, and this is about their goal. They want to bring in Russia into the Middle East, and they think this will be the second front. I mean, Hillary Clinton even has said in speeches, the way to beat Russia is by attrition. Engage them as many places as you possibly can, but use everybody else's army, not ours. And then when they weaken them, then we go in for the kill.
Interesting.
I mean, she's basically said that publicly.
So let me ask you this. What kind of cycle do you think we're entering into? We're obviously a war cycle. Higher energy prices, higher goods and services. Are we entering a risk on time where we're just looking for higher yields? We're very nervous. If financial institutions are shaky and their lending dries up.
Yes. I mean, look, another example of how these neocons are completely brain dead. They go over and they're threatening China with war over Taiwan. Well, China was the number one holder of U.S. debt. What do you then say to them? Would you please buy another $100 billion from us so we can buy some bullets to shoot you? I mean, it doesn't even seem to be any common sense to this. That's why interest rates are going up. And I can tell you that, the Fed, even Powell has just recently come out and warned that this spending is not sustainable. That's about as polite as he possibly can get. The Fed is out of control. It cannot stop inflation. It cannot prevent interest rates from rising. The Fed only, has power over the short-term rate. The long-term rates are set by the market. And if nobody's buying the 30-year bonds, then why would you at this point? Interest rates go up. All right. So I would not worry about that as far as, impacting gold or something along that nature. I mean, because like I say, this is all coming together. It's much more complicated than people can realize. And I think that the downside in analysis, people try to reduce everything to a single cause and effect. And I'm sorry, it's just not that way. We have so many different trends at this stage in the game. Interest rates are going up. We have inflation that's going to go up because also of shortages that will continue. And as we head into war, we're looking at displacement of people. We're looking at uncertainty in a lot of areas. And our computer is basically showing that this is going to escalate between 25 and maybe start to peak out around 27. But, I also should point out, look, Klaus Schwab's Great Reset is our 2032. The two of us are going back and forth for a long time. We started our first World Economic Conference in 1985. He started his first World Economic Forum gathering in 1987. All right. When Marcus Vetter did the movie on me, The Forecaster, he hired a production company to bring in Marcus and did one on him called The Forum. It's been back and forth constantly. He even found finally somebody with the name Martin Armstrong, some headhunter or something, and he puts out a press release. Oh, Martin Armstrong has joined the WWIII, and that's not me. Sorry, but I mean, he understands what our model is saying, and 2032. We're looking at this is the collapse of Republican governments, just the same as in the 18th century was the collapse of monarchy. This is our time. Republican governments, they call us a democracy, and that's all propaganda as well. I mean, we were never asked to vote. Should we go to war against Russia? Yes or no? Shall we raise their taxes? Were we ever asked about that? No. Even in Vietnam, it was, came to a head with a lot of people complaining. You were 18, you were old enough to go die for your country. You weren't old enough to have a drink, and you certainly were not allowed to vote. That's democracy? Sounds more like dictatorship. So, basically, we're looking at the collapse of Republican forms of government. And maybe, and that comes into play by 2032. And I'm hoping that after that, we go to a real democracy where we're asked those questions. Shall we go to war against Russia? Yes or no? The average person in Russia, as well as the United States and China, nobody wants war. It's always the heads of state and these neocons or whatever. One of the oldest vets from World War I, said, 45 million people died. We should have just threw all the politicians in a room, gave them guns, and see who came out. But this is what we're looking at. Schwab is just trying to push it in his direction. Schwab is really a Marxist. He keeps a bust of Lenin, who was one of his mentors, basically on the shelf in his office. I've seen that. And look, he's trying to push it. He knows this is coming. He knows this is the collapse of governments, etc. And he's pushing it in his direction. That's what he's trying to do. You own nothing and be happy. It's complete nonsense. That's, really, it's governments that are defaulting. They've never had an intention to pay off any of these debts. And when you start using war and stuff like this, who's going to buy it? I mean, that's the real problem. So if you can't keep rolling this debt, that's what brought down many city-states in the Middle Ages. Nobody would buy the new stuff. And once that happens, it collapses.
Wow, collapse. And collapse, I think, is what we could be facing. What do you think the odds are that we see the stock market get into trouble in here? Are we going to be entering one of those periods where we have runaway prices higher or sideways or lower, do you think?
No, short term, you're looking at minor corrections until people begin to figure out, and then basically it goes up. Main reason it goes up is because you're then faced with the dilemma. Where do I put my money? You want government debt or you want private assets? Even if you look at the German hyperinflation, everything that survived were all the, art, coins, stamps, property, stuff like that. When they came up with the new currency in 1925, was backed by real estate. It's the tangible assets that survive, not the government debt. And we're in a major, this time it's the government that's collapsing. In 1929, U.S. had a balanced budget. That's why all the money was coming here, pushing the dollar higher. That created um, basically, as the dollar rose, farmers couldn't sell anything outside the country. That started protectionism. Nobody understood what was actually going on, but all of Europe defaulted on their debts in 1931. This time, it's all governments that are going to default.
Well, default tends to send, hard assets higher. So are we looking at a commodities boom? Are we looking at an, uranium boom and metals as well?
Yeah, pretty much everything. That's why real estate has been going up so much in mainly the red states. You have people fleeing. Hundreds of thousands of people have been leaving California. The same thing with New York, Chicago. Down here in Florida, I still get phone calls at least 3 times a week. You want to sell your house? No, no, thank you. Where am I going to go? Chicago, Um, so you have a diversity there too. You have real estate actually declining in the blue states and rising in the red states because you have migration going on. Um, the latest poll shows now that 80% of New Yorkers think the Democrats have made a huge mistake with all the migrants. I mean, the city's overrun.
You'd be amazed how many folks we have. I just, on the way to this interview today, I bumped into two more new neighbors who are visiting with other new neighbors. And again, from all the areas you're referring to. So you're definitely onto a trend there. And by the way, this is near Asheville, up in the Blue Ridge. Martin, what else have we missed? I mean, because you've covered a lot of territory today.
No, well, I think you just have to understand that it's pretty much everything going up. It's not going to be gold against the stock market. I mean, basically, when you're talking about a major issue like this, it's basically everything is tangible. Equities will go up. I mean, not the ones that don't have any actual tangible assets. Uh, um, but just virtual art or something like that. No, I mean, but the ones that actually have something, then that's different. So I think just understand that this is the real trend. So it's not just simply gold or silver, but we're dealing with a political change domestically. Um, and you may even end up by the mid 20s with the U.S. separating. I mean, that's, if DeSantis wanted to build a wall, I mean, I'd be all for it.
Do you are you concerned at all? Are your model showing anything about the potential for nuclear conflict?
Probably off around the mid 20s. I would say the earliest would probably be, 2025. I mean, you can't push countries to the limit. I mean, do you really think you could conquer Russia and nobody's going to push a button at that last minute? I mean, this is insane.
Are any of your affluent friends and colleagues making extreme plans in that event?
I think it's Amogen came out with a pill for radioactivity. They've been selling like crazy, and the government bought truckloads of them. Why?
Yeah, what good will it
ask
do?
yourself that. You can search our site. They started buying Amogen radiation sickness pills. I think about 2 years ago.
So in about 2 years, we should expect to be interviewing Martin Armstrong from his bunker, about 1,000 feet
I'm
under.
going to wait on the beach and with my dogs and say, just wait for the mushroom cloud and say, I've had it.
Sayonara, sayonara, cruel world. I'm with you, my friend. We'll have to do a show from beautiful sunny Florida beaches. All right. Any other topicality? I mean, you have covered all the bases and all the questions I had today.
No, I think that pretty much does it. I mean, if people just understand, look at this thing from a big picture standpoint. Um, You can never reduce everything to a single cause and effect.
All right, we need to be very careful. This is a very advanced multivariate problem we're facing in the markets today. It's not, let's say, our granddad's market, so to speak, where you could just, run a linear regression and have a good idea where the stock market would be tomorrow in gold, maybe. Today, things. So, would you agree then that every investor should have at least a modicum of metals to kind of keep them safe, keep them steady?
Well, look, they're also pushing the digital central bank currencies, and that's largely, I can tell you, I've been in conversations with them. They think eliminating physical money, get rid of all the cash, and they will get 35% more in taxation.
Ah,
It's always how much are they going to get out of this. I
ah.
think that you'll see a black market. Um, I would tend to look more at the silver coins that are dated 64 and back. Because again, look, you have to look at it from a standpoint of someone that doesn't even know what it is. All right, they'll be able to look at a coin and say, "Oh, yeah, I know. I've heard 1964 and back is okay." You're dealing with idiots at that stage. Not everybody's going to know what gold and silver really are. And I would be concerned that when they do that, they will most likely probably go back to making gold and silver purchases illegal, as they did, after the 30s. Mainly because this is about power. All right. And why would they allow, gold and silver purchases and cryptocurrencies after they do they get rid of all the money and they force everybody into the central bank digital currency? This is about power. So I think you have to understand that if you want any gold or silver, there's going to be probably a black market. That will probably be the facilitating factor. That's why I suggest the coins. But I would suspect that they would prevent you from buying gold or silver with the digital backed currencies when they come.
Okay, I got it. But a big question for you. You did bring up digital and digital currencies. And of course, that begs the question. Bitcoin is ripping here. Last check, 35, 36,000. Do you
Mhm.
think this is the genesis of a new bull market?
I mean, look, I don't see the cryptocurrencies competing with the central bank digital currency. They're just not going to allow it. This is all about power, and um, that's, I think, at the end game. I mean, I know these people think that, oh, Bitcoin will replace the dollar. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. They're not going to surrender their power and say, "Oh, gee, very sorry, we've been all wrong. Yes, here it is. It's all yours now." It's not going to happen without a fight.
Okay, yeah. So you're not totally convinced then. You think the greenback might have a pause and then just keep ripping higher on higher rates then?
Short term, yes. Whether it survives, I don't think it's going to survive past 27. Um, it's what they're going to bring in the digital currencies, and it depends upon how fast they do that. I would say the soonest they could possibly do it is probably second quarter next year.
So, is it safe to say then that you're expecting the dollar to completely lose its reserve currency hegemony in the wake of competing central bank digital currencies such as the BOJ, the BOE, and China?
No, what makes the dollar the reserve currency? It has really nothing to do with gold, the government, or anything else. All these emerging markets, if you want to, get money, where do you go? You go to New York. All right, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. This is the financial market. It's deep. This is where you have to come to get money. The day is not here yet where China is going to be able to lend to everybody that wants to start a company in advance. That's the key. It's got nothing to do with gold reserves or anything of that nature. London was the financial capital of the world because it was the financial center. That's where you can buy bonds on eBay. Even China issued bonds in British pounds because that's where the money was. So that's why you have all these emerging markets. They issue debt in dollars because that's where the money is, to the pension funds and et cetera. And so the reserve status of the dollar is something completely different. The IMF is trying to eliminate that, and they wrongly think that they can just create an IMF digital currency, and then that will become the dollar. Unless they're going to have the deep financial markets, it's not going to be it.
Wow. All right. Well, just with encyclopedic knowledge, Mr. Martin Armstrong, hey, tell us about your documentary.
Well, they're actually doing a two things coming out. They're doing a sequel to The Forecaster, and they're taking the original Forecaster and turning it into a Hollywood movie now.
Hey.
It's going to be, I guess, like the Big Short.
Wow. And The Big Short, did that leave an impression too?
Yeah, so they're looking at. I agreed to do this because they're looking at it from a standpoint of educating people from a cyclical perspective.
They better kick this thing into high gear, don't you think? At this point,
I'm telling them we got to hurry up here.
exactly. All right. Well, we're very excited about that. We'll look forward to getting all your links up there and any other contact information you'd like to leave with folks, sir.
No, just our next conference that might be the last one because I'm not sure if people are going to be allowed to travel much longer afterwards. But it's November 17th and 19th in Orlando, where at least everybody internationally can fly in. But after that, I'm not sure international travel will be available. Even Europe is putting in restricted visas, and everybody now has to apply. So an American cannot just hop on a plane and go to Europe anymore.
Oh, Lord. I haven't even, this is the first I've heard of this.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, no, I know very. Being a world traveler, I know. And the latest is the excuses that you have these Caribbean islands issuing golden passports, and they're saying, oh, terrorists could buy them and then come into our country, so they don't care where you're coming from. And as of January 1st, absolutely everybody will have to be cleared prior if you're even interested in going to Europe.
All right. Well, Martin Armstrong, we really appreciate you. And also all those wonderful folks helping run this show over there, Miss Cassandra and the whole gang. They're super sweet, aren't they? And very helpful. We just want you to have a fantastic rest of the week and look forward to further commentary in 2023, sir.
Well, thanks a lot and good luck.
Okay. Talk soon.